2 days for just one knob. One knob. It took my entire 2 days. The story starts in the cockpit of a Boeing 777, especially with a minimum selector on its EFIS control panel. This little thing looks simple, but it's a deceptively complex piece of hardware. A dual-layer knob with the push-button function on top, and my physical hardware, just a plain single-layer rotary encoder. So here's the problem. How do you use a simple input to simulate 3 different functions? The no-brainer solution, of course, is just to build identical dual-layer knob. A direct hardware for hardware match. It's an easy way out. But what if I stuck with my simple single knob? Is the problem unsolvable? This is where software comes in. A customer gives me a brilliant idea. Use a long press to differentiate actions. When you break it down, the large outer knob is really just a 2-position switch, clicking between 2 options. The small inner knob is a true rotary for adjusting the value. This looked promising. We could use a long press to simulate a back and forth click on the large knob. My first version was ready in no time. The logic was start a timer on press down, and when the button is released, check how much time has passed. If it was long enough, trigger the long press event. It sounds flawless on paper, but in practice it felt completely wrong. My hand has no idea how long a long press is supposed to be. I cannot expect it to silently count 1,000, 2 1,000 every time I use it. It was completely counterintuitive. A good design should never make the user think. So I built version 2. This time the logic was flipped. I just press and hold. When the preset time, say 1 second, is reached, the software automatically triggers a long press function. The moment I see the value change on the screen, I know it works, and I naturally release the button. Now that felt right.
Yes!
It took me 4 days just to refine the code to make it elegant. So that it makes X-Plane system can reuse these APIs. You think the story ends there with a nice, clean solution. On the contrary, the bigger challenge was still waiting for me. PMDG, a top-tier aircraft developer, had hidden another surprise in this knob. The inner rotary just adjusts the radio altitude, goes from 1 to 1,000. If 1 click equals 1 unit, you'd have to turn it precisely 1,000 times. And you cannot just spin it wildly. It requires deliberate clicks. Anyone would go insane. The PMDG developers obviously knew this. So they built an acceleration feature. When you spin the mouse wheel rapidly, the value no longer increases by 1. It starts jump by 10. Or even 50. This acceleration logic was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was PMDG 777's own unique creative solution. It also highlights a key point. When you are making hardware for flight simulators, you will always run into surprises because the software developers themselves are constantly innovating. Faced with this kind of creative logic, traditional one-to-one mapping tools are left in the dust. A popular tool like Mobifly, for example, is notoriously slow in its rotary encoder response. It would be impossible to implement this kind of responsive, high-speed acceleration feature using it. This is where our own scripting system had to shine. I wrote nearly 100 lines of code just to replicate the connected feeling of PMDG's acceleration on my physical knob. The goal was singular: to make the experience silky smooth. When I spin the knob fast, the numbers on the screen have to fly. The instant my hand stops, the numbers have to stop. No delay, no lag. Now let's step back and look at the big picture. When you want to simulate a complex aircraft component, you have two paths. The first one is to spend money and build identical hardware. The second one is to get creative with the software, achieving the same or even better experience at lower cost. We chose the second path because you are not going to fly just one aircraft for the rest of your life. Even real-world pilots transition to a new airframe. This means our hardware needs to be flexible enough to adapt to all clever innovations that different aircraft developers come up with. After thinking it all through, I'm convinced only scripting can handle this job. It's flexible enough to manage any flexible logic, and it's easy to work with. You just edit a text file and reload. No compiling needed. That's the whole story behind this little knob. A small battle fought over hardware, software, and user experience.